Hello, everybody. Today we're joined by Bad Comet Games to talk about an upcoming venture for them as they enter into the wilds of the Serengeti Plains.
Welcome to the Serengeti. Here lies one of the Earth's most precious natural heritage, where millions of wild animals graze, hunt, and thrive. We invite you, as a celebrated director, to produce the greatest wildlife documentary in history. Wild Serengeti. From carnivores and scavengers to large and migratory herbivores. Discover the wide range of animals that inhabit the Serengeti. Capture their grace and beauty in the wild on camera. Film scenes filled with creativity, inspiration, and expertise. You could even manage to find a rare scene never seen before. Combine exciting scenes together and create powerful synergies to advance your documentary score. But the animals will not wait for you, for they must constantly be on the move. Your time and resources are limited. So always remember to plan your actions efficiently. At the Serengeti, the cornucopia of the wild, film the greatest wildlife documentary of our time.
So it's a pleasure to have you at UK Games Expo, even if it's only virtually.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Kuno Kim. I'm the designer of Wild Serengeti. And
my name is Lucia. I am a community manager.
So this is not your first game for Bad Comet, but it's a slightly different game. Your first game was Warring States, which I suppose most people would think of as more a sort of a tactical war game. Whereas in Wild Serengeti, you eliminate all of the war and are going for a much more sedate and mellow game. Do you want to tell me a bit about the idea behind it?
I'm a huge fan of wildlife documentaries. Mm-hmm. And last year, I watched a documentary called Our Planet, and I was really surprised by all of these beautiful animals and their, behaviors. And then, as a designer, I was inspired by that documentary to create a game about wildlife.
What we're talking about here is a game about bringing people into the heart of the Serengeti Plains and capturing the various types of wildlife that they see on camera. But it's not just one basic mechanic within the game. You have multiple mechanics that all feed in to make the game sort of quite unique. Can you tell us a bit about how you sort of develop the structure of the game?
So we basically have pattern building and set collection, mm-hmm. and a little bit of engine building element. So I mixed those mechanics to create a unique experience.
Mm-hmm. And when people are playing through, do they take the role of one of these characters that we're looking at, or are these part of the game mechanics?
So basically, you become a director, mm-hmm. trying to film basically a documentary about Serengeti. So you're not playing really the animals, but you're playing your own self as a director. Mm-hmm. To basically film the winning documentary for the game.
Whenever we're looking at the board layout, then you start with the Rock of Ages. Is that your turn tracker? And on this, then you play a 6-turn game, and in it you're trying to capture the best footage you can of the various animals within the plains themselves.
Right, and it also tracks which coins that you would earn during that round, or the events that would take place. So like if you see for round 4 and 6, right underneath there's a card that shows you which event would be playing in that round.
Okay. And what sort of things do the events do to change up the game then?
There's about 12 of these.
Or ceremony?
Ceremonies where you would count how many, depending on which award ceremony it is, there's an animal that's portrayed on it, and you would basically count all the animals and the icons that you would have collected, and it would count towards the documentary scores in the end that you could further on to add to your documentary score.
If we have a quick look, there is a rulebook available that you can download and essentially take a gander at. And I think this shows some of the things quite nicely in it as well, because the animals themselves, which are all these sort of lovely animeeples, move across this wide area of the Serengeti itself. But then when you're drawing scene cards to try and get the points, they may not always be in the area you want them to be in. So you have to try and coax them in with food, or alternatively just use the magic of special effects to maybe shift their location somewhat. So they may not actually be in the plains. They could be paddling in the waters instead, and that's not where you need them to be. So you can sort of use trickery to get the shots that you want, like any good wildlife documentarian does. With this being the base game that's coming to Kickstarter, do you have plans to expand it beyond what we see here in the rulebook currently, the prototype rulebook?
I think through these stretch goals, we will add a few more scene cards and specialist cards, the characters you can select during the game.
But right now, I don't think we have any plans.
Yeah,
really add expansions at the moment.
It's a fairly self-contained game as it is already. There's a lot in there for up to 4 players, and
yes,
I noticed, and I noticed there are some mechanics that vary depending on the amount of players you have. So when you reach the migratory phase, you may have quite a lot of the animals that you've been stalking for some time for a shot that suddenly flee off to pastures new and stop you from actually getting the shots that you wanted to see. Are there many variations on things like the migratory phase? You were saying that there's cards that play out on turn 4 and 6, the event cards. Are they like this, or is this a separate mechanic within the actual game itself then?
Well, we have the migrations that happen so every like 4, 5, 6 rounds. And then we have the events that go on where you could count towards your documentary scores, but also for our players that are a bit more experienced and want a bit more variety, we do have character cards as well that you basically choose in the very beginning of the game that could add to, various different gameplays every, time that you game. And I believe we have about 12 of the specialist cards in the works at the moment, but we're continually trying to add more variety and things like that. And the ones that you do see on the rule book is just the ones that are a little bit maybe hard to understand. So we're just trying to get people to understand, which is why that we included them in the prototype rule book. But we do have a lot more in the work.
Well, it's good to get feedback from people whenever they're looking through this, especially if it is something that's a little bit tricky to get the idea across. Sometimes it's nice to see what various people interpret the rule to be. I also see solo modes available, which is very important in games these days, I feel, if not just because it gives people the opportunity to sit down and play the game themselves before they introduce it to friends, but with the way the world is nowadays, being able to have a solo version of a game is always handy. Was that always something that you want to include in your game?
So in our past game, the Shaolia, there was a lot of feedback saying that they'd love to see a solo version of the game, which is why when we started to design this game, we made sure to include that from the very beginning.
Makes a lot of sense, and it also helps develop the community as well, that they know that you're accepting feedback on the games and using it to make a better product for the next games going forward. Is there anything else you have planned for Wild Serengeti that you want to tell us about?
So if the launch goes well and the project goes well, we said before that we don't have any expansions in the works, but would love to continue on to maybe different versions of the game. So like Wild Pacific, wild, just different regions that, and maybe include a lot more animals. We've been getting a lot of feedback about wanting to see different animal meeples that are not in the Serengeti. So it'd be great if everything was a success and we could go on to making different editions.
Based on what people have fed back and how keen they are on wildlife documentaries, the Blue Planet and things like that have gone absolutely spectacularly. I don't see any reason why it has to be limited to just the Serengeti. People can obviously jump on wherever and really explore and expand. So hopefully this all goes well. If people are interested, then they can go over to your website and sign up to keep an eye on the launch, which is August 18th currently. So you just come across to badcomet.co, and then you can go into Wild Serengeti and get notified on the launch. If people are downloading the rulebook and giving feedback, do they do that through the website or through Facebook?
They could do that through our Facebook group. We also have an Instagram account, a Twitter account. I believe our email is also listed on the website. So wherever anyone's comfortable sending us a message, feedback, input, we're glad to receive them.
Well, there you go, folks. If you're interested in becoming a David Attenborough-like narrator and capturing the very best in wildlife documentaries, then check out Bad Comet Games' Wild Serengeti, coming up on the 18th of August. Until then, bye-bye.